Hello there, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Chatting with the Light Keeper. As always, I'm Edward, and you are you. And this week, we're going to talk about some mistakes that happen when we explore the wonderful world of kink. And these are mistakes that some of you might say, well, beginners make them, and that's true. But there are also things where if you're experienced, this is not going to be a podcast just directed at people who are newer to their explorations. I think no matter where you sit on your experience level, there will be things here that will make us think. So let's jump right into it. And I guess one more little quick aside before we do jump into it is I actually spent some time. I couldn't sleep the other night, and so I went down the rabbit hole of looking through research and things on mistakes that people make um, when they are exploring or digging more into the world of BDSM. And this is where this came from. This wasn't like I went out and read blog posts or am relying on my own experiences to create this. I actually went down some rabbit holes, read some peer-reviewed research, amongst other things, and unfortunately, because when I finished, it was 5 in the morning, I don't have my usual citations like I normally do when I research because I try to note things. I mean, if you're interested, yeah, I can send you the whole mess of them, but I don't have them neatly, all neat and tidy, so they won't be here. But if you want the messy version, reach out, drop me a DM. I'll be happy to share. Anyways, so we're going to get into some things, some of the common mistakes that happen. And one of the first things that I kept seeing was that um, somehow people who are newer, they've sort of put experienced folks up on a platform. And I know I was guilty of this as well in the beginning. Oh wow, they've been doing this for, X amount of time. That's so awesome. They must know so much. And while it's true, some people who have been around for a while do have a huge store of knowledge, and many of them are happy to share, which is wonderful. However, experience doesn't mean people will be good people. You could have somebody who, say, for example, is an experienced auto mechanic and still do crap work or take advantage of customers. And in the world of kink, sometimes people who are newer tend to think that experienced people have learned from their mistakes. They don't make them anymore. And because they have experience where they've been involved in a community, they don't violate boundaries. And it's a mistake to think that way. Yes, there are many, many outstanding people with experience in the lifestyle, but experience doesn't mean somebody is safe to engage with. Um, so just keep that in mind. Experience does not always mean they're safe. Don't sort of lump the two together. No matter what somebody says their experience is, or even if they have a proven track record where they can prove they've been involved in a community for X, Y, and Z, don't let that stop you from doing your homework, from doing your vetting. Another thing that is interesting that I found is that we like to attach labels to ourselves right out of the gate when we first start exploring. Oh man, I just started going down the DS rabbit hole, and man, I know I'm a dominant, or I'm a submissive, or I'm a switch. Or they feel a need to connect to a community or to partner up right away. And being interested in something doesn't mean you have to adopt an identity or become part of any community. My advice is if you're newer, spend some time with some quality self reflection, do your homework, do some learning before you jump into the pool. It'll help you better navigate things once you're in the pool of the lifestyle. But take your time, go slow. You don't need to attach a label. You can say you're undecided, you're exploring. You don't have to attach a label. You don't have to run out there and jump into a community before you're really ready and before you have the knowledge. So it's very important to do that rather than just sort of go, wow, this pool looks amazing and the aesthetic looks really great. I'm just gonna dive right in. Spend some time on the self-reflection and education, before you jump into the pool. Another thing that is interesting is that many people, um, for some reason, expect that their interest in kink or BDSM will stay the same over time. That what you like today is what you're going to love tomorrow, and what you dislike now will stay something that you don't like. And I think a good example here is to remind us maybe with food. I don't know if we've had this where you've experienced a food where as a child you didn't like it, and now you have grown up somewhat. You've leveled up in age. I don't know whether we've grown up or leveled up, but and suddenly the something you didn't like from your childhood tastes really good, or maybe something from your childhood that tasted good doesn't taste good anymore. And it's the same way with our kinks and our lifestyle. It evolves, it changes, and change is good. It means you're growing. So you don't have to stay liking the same things. It's perfectly okay to change, to grow, to experiment. That's all helpful and normal. And if you find what you really enjoy and that's what works for you, and there's no problem to stay there too. You don't have to be changing. But most people do find that their desires, their wants, or their needs do evolve as we change and grow in the lifestyle. Another thing that I found really interesting is a good number of people tend to think that other people came to the lifestyle to explore or made it their home because they have the same underlying motivations. And research shows that, no one's journey is sort of a duplicate. Everyone, while we may have similarities, we may meet people that have very, very similar situations to ours. Um, there's so many different reasons that bring people to the lifestyle that is fabulous, but we shouldn't automatically assume that somebody we've met and perhaps building a friendship with um, has come to the lifestyle with the same motivations or they're seeking the same things that we are. It's great. The more you meet people in the lifestyle, you will find others with sort of similar backstories, but don't necessarily assume that everyone is coming from that same place that you are. Now, another wonderful thing that I found in the research is that sometimes people feel that if you sort of admit or come out, if you will, as being kinky or into BDSM, that you have to be comfortable with everything out there that's kinktastic. If you are into DS, you have to be comfortable with some of the more, I don't know, I don't want to say extreme, but that's the word that keeps popping into my mind. But some of the more intense things that are out there. Maybe you just enjoy a little spanking during play and you're not into the whole DS thing. In fact, DS might kind of weird you out, and that's perfectly okay. It's okay to feel uncomfortable with things that other people engage in. That's perfectly normal, and just I think it's important to not necessarily to judge others who do things differently, or maybe they practice a more intense variant of what you do or what you like. As long as they're being consensual and doing all the right things for consent and doing it safer, that's great. But just because you find something that you like or you're exploring, it doesn't mean that you have to be comfortable with everything. And that's why we have, limits like, I'm comfortable here, I'm not comfortable there. And it's perfectly okay. Just because, if you're kinky, it doesn't mean that you have to be comfortable with everything that's sort of under the kink umbrella. And something that kind of surprised me. is the amount of people that tend to think that if they have a fantasy, a kinktastic fantasy, that they have to act on it. And it's great to have fantasies. It can be absolutely amazing to bring them to life. But it's important to understand that fantasy, curiosity, and actually doing it are not the same thing. Um, in fact, if you dive into the research, if you have a sleepless night, um, go ahead, dive into the research, and you'll find that the amount of people who have BDSM related fantasies is considerably, and I mean a lot more people have those fantasies. They're actually much more common than you would believe. But having those fantasies and acting on them are two different things. And when you dive in and you look at the numbers, I think you'll be kind of amazed by it. And on top of that, just because if you're into the lifestyle, if you have a sort of kinktastic fantasy, you don't have to bring it to life. Um, I know for myself, I've had some fantasies and thought, yeah, no, that's not something I would want to bring to life ever. But yet we have these thoughts and ideas, and just because we have them, it doesn't mean we need to bring them to life. Now, this one is fairly common for newer submissives, and it was kind of shocking, but a good number of newer submissives think that somebody who takes sort of the title of dominant, they assume that because they've taken this title, they automatically know what they're doing. And perhaps this also ties into why we see so many people take the term master. And master is something that personally I regard as something that's given by a community. It's something that's earned, either by a community or in a relationship. It's not something that I believe, once again, this is my opinion, that you can just anoint yourself with at 3 in the morning, throw it on your Instagram profile and say, I am a master. No, it doesn't work that way. But yeah, it goes back to just because somebody has taken a label or a role, it doesn't mean they're competent in it. Um, I could put out a sign today and say that, I'm Edward and I'm a roofer. You have a leaky roof, give me a call. Okay, it doesn't mean I know how to fix your roof. I don't. Um, but I could say it, and you know, it would be dishonest. But if climbing on roofs and pretending to fix them somehow was a kink of mine, well, I could definitely fake having that knowledge to satisfy my kink. Um, so safety and experience do matter, but research has found a lot of gaps between the amount of experience people actually have in their safety training. So I think a good thing to look for is a dominant who will admit, "Hey, I don't have experience with that, but yeah, I'd like to learn more about it. Maybe we can learn together." Knowing what you don't know in something like the world of BDSM or kink, it's important to be able to say, "I don't know." It really is. So don't think that every dominant out there automatically knows what they're doing because A, they don't, and B, they're human, so they're going to make mistakes. Another thing that was really shocking is the amount of people who believe safe words somehow makes an activity automatically safe. And first of all, a safe word only works as well as the people who use them and whether they're respected. Having a safe word is great, but if the person or people you are engaging with don't respect it, it's not gonna matter. You could sit there and say tarantula or red or whatever it is as much as you want, and if they're not going to respect it, it's worthless. So having a safe word doesn't make things safe. And I think it's also important to recognize um, that 1 in 3 people will have their consent violated in contested spaces. So this is why vetting is so important. And remember that the only person that can really keep you safer is yourself. And having a safe word, yes, it's great. Um, but sort of think of it as one of those tandem skydives where you jump out of the plane with somebody else. Yes, you're jumping out of the plane with somebody else, but it sort of takes both of you to pull the parachute, what is it, the ripcord, in order for the parachute to deploy. So if you're jumping with somebody who doesn't want the parachute to come out, you can pull on your little ripcord all you want, but if they're not going to pull on theirs, it doesn't matter. And safe words kind of like that. I know tandem skydiving doesn't quite work that way, but it's the example that popped into my mind. So I went with it. Um, Another thing that people tend to believe, and I think this is perhaps looking from the outside, but it came up multiple places, is that if somebody admits that they're submissive, it's all about them giving up their agency, you know, giving up the ability sort of their free will and their choices. And it's important to understand that everything that happens within submission is consented to, it's negotiated, there are boundaries, there are limits, and that's what really separates everything consensual from being abusive. And I also believe that submission, if it's your thing, it should be empowering, same as being a dominant or a switch or just exploring your kinks. It should be something that is empowering. And it's not something that should ever take away your own power. So always be aware of and look for the connections that empower you and stay away from those that want to take your power from you. Another thing, and this is very, very common, is that people will tend to think that there's a true way, or they'll sort of become devotee, a devotee of someone who um, teaches kink, and they will sort of think that there is a single template that everyone needs to follow. And the thing is, there's not a true way to embrace the lifestyle. It's what works for you consensually. It doesn't matter what others say. It's what works for you. And also, if you're newer, there's a spelling of true that you should know. It's TWEU. Um, sort of lifestyle slang when you see somebody talk about the true way and they spell it TWUE. They're poking fun. They're making fun of that. So if you haven't seen it, you will, and understand that nope, they didn't sort of fat finger on their keyboard. That's actually they're they're actually meaning that way. So if your desires are based on informed, um, revocable consent and you're enthusiastic and all that jazz, embrace them. Don't think that there is a one true way. There are unsafe ways, but there isn't a true way. So please do bear that in mind. Another thing that's really surprisingly common is people assume that there's something wrong with them for liking kink. And when I say something wrong with them, I'm meaning with their mental health. No, it's a myth, but it's not that long ago that it was sort of based on fact. In fact, it's just been 13 years since the DSM, that's a mental health professional sort of diagnostic tool, um, would have labeled much of BDSM as being a mental disorder. So it's a stigma that exists. It's something many people feel. I've felt it because of this. But no, it is, it, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It is absolutely a myth. Another thing that was surprising is the amount of people who really think that Consent is just sort of saying yes before something happens. And consent is so important. In fact, it's what everything in the world of wonderful kink is based on. And that's why we have to communicate, negotiate, talk about our boundaries, talk about our limits, and understand that we have the ability to withdraw consent at any point in time. Consent is so much more than just saying yes or no. Um, and one of the key pieces that I believe we should focus on with consent is called the fries method, which is just like French fries. Um, and it was developed by Planned Parenthood in 2016, so it's 10 years old. And what fries stands for, it's a fancy acronym. It stands for freely given, which means nobody's coercing anybody into it. There's nobody going, "Oh, please, please, it's my fantasy. Will you please?" Or, you know, you're not a real submissive unless you do this. Or there's no, a real dominant would. There's none of that. It's freely given. Yes, I want to do this. No one's making me, guilting me in any way, shape, or form, influencing my decision. I'm choosing to do it on my own free will. It's revocable, meaning anybody can say, stop. No, I don't want to do this anymore at any time for any reason. It's informed, and this is a big one. It means that you truly understand what you're agreeing to. So if you're not 100% sure, you're 95% sure, learn that other 5% before you give your consent. Make sure you are informed. Now, next is the E, and that's enthusiastic. Now, that doesn't mean you have to jump up and down. And I don't know if any of you remember Tom Cruise on Oprah talking about oh, I can't think of the actress that he was going to marry or did marry, who was on Dawson's Creek way back in the day. But he was like jumping up and down on the seat cushions, talking about it, sort of over the top enthusiastic, and that's not what it means. It just means that this is something you want to do. You're not just sort of saying yes to appease somebody. You're wanting to do this. And finally, the S in fries is for specific. It covers what's going to specifically happen, sort of a roadmap. This will happen, this won't happen, this is inbounds, this is out of bounds. That's what the fries method talks about. And while fries wasn't specifically designed for kink or BDSM, it's a fantastic way to make sure that when we're having consent conversations, it's not just saying yes before anything happens. Now, this is something that is surprising, but isn't surprising. The amount of people who use porn as an instruction manual. And there are some good things about porn. It can be inspirational, it can give us ideas, it can sort of be like, oh, that's a fantasy. I'd like to try that someday. But research into the lifestyle and kink finds that porn is often a very common sort of first exposure or first experience where people, it's no longer 50 Shades, it's now porn, where people are getting that first taste of kinktastic things and understand that um, it will create a very inaccurate view of things. And when you confuse fantasy with real life, it leads to real problems. So, once again, porn is inspiration, it is not education. So, if you see something on your screen that makes you go, "Oh, that sounds fun," or you read it in a book and you think, "Wow, yeah, I'd like to try that." Do your homework, learn more about it rather than relying on somebody's fictional interpretation um, of what it is. And a little while ago, we talked about the mental health side of it and how the stigma around mental health and the lifestyle is still a thing. Well, society still. I mean, if we walked into the grocery and had a I love BDSM t-shirt on, people would look at us funny. There'd be judgment. Some, Jim or Judy Judgment or Jim and Judy Judgment, the judgy couple, would probably walk up and say something to us. It's not something that is readily acceptable in the world. It is much more acceptable than what it was. Thank you to 50 Shades for that, for all of its faults. 50 Shades has done wonders for making the lifestyle more acceptable or accepting in the general population. But it's still something that people can feel stigmatized for liking, even if they don't tell anybody. They can feel like, oh, if I create a second Instagram account and start looking up kink, somebody's going to find out and I'm going to get judged. So it's very important um, that we don't, if you have an interest, that you don't let society's stigmas stop you um, from exploring it or even talking about it with your, um, with a mental health or a physical health provider where we need to. And if you ever do need to have those conversations and you're looking for um, a mental health or physical health provider that is kink friendly, in the States, the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom has a directory that lets you find people in healthcare to caterers that are kink friendly. So you can support the greater community and also find the health services that you need from professionals who are kink aware. So that is a good thing to know, and don't allow society's judgment to hold you back. And finally, the most common bit of assumptions that are out there that happened is people will develop in their head a stereotype of what a dominant is or what a submissive is. And in fact, you'll see this all the time online. You'll see posts, a real dominant does X, or a true submissive does Y. And it makes people feel that they have to change who they are to be the good dominant or the super submissive that they want to be. And that's just not the case. The most important thing is to be yourself. We're all unique. And that's what makes connections great because when we're ourselves, we truly make connections rather than sort of playing a role, which is what we're doing when we're trying to be the good dominant or trying to be the good submissive. We're playing a role, and you know, none of us are going to get an Academy Award. And even if you did, would you want an Academy Award for your everyday life? That would be a whole lot of acting. So those are 15 things that people, when they either come to or are exploring DS, are actually some of the more common things that comes up in their journey. So, a few of the takeaways, if anything, I would like to leave you with here is make sure you learn before you leap. Before you jump into the lifestyle pool, learn how to swim. Know what you want, know what you're seeking. Even if you're not 100% sure, get some knowledge, educate yourself. Don't rely on the kindness of others because that puts you at risk. Um, the only person that can keep you safer is yourself. So please bear that in mind. There's no right way to do things. There are unsafe ways, but there's no universal right way. There's what's right for you as long as it's, consensual and above board and all that jazz. Be yourself. You know, your interests can look completely different from mine and still be perfectly legit. There isn't a set way to do it. So be yourself. And when you do interact with people, and if you are considering building friendships or relationship, or sort of getting more involved, maybe in person or an online community, do your homework, do some vetting, just make sure you are surrounding yourself with good, safe people. So that's what I have this week. Um, I would like it if any of you listening at this point, you take a minute and just drop something in the comments wherever you're listening and just share something that you learned in your journey that you think would help somebody who is newer have a better experience on their trip through the wonderful world of kink. And finally, I have a personal request. Um, Whatever platform you're listening on, there's the like button, there's the follow button. Go ahead and tap those for me. And what those do is, as a creator, somebody who does this, and I do this selfishly for myself, not for you, for myself, not for financial rewards, but as a creative outlet. But everything now is, of course, run by the almighty algorithm and AI. And tapping the like and the follow buttons, what that does is it tells the wonderful world of AI that, hey, there are people out there who do care about what Edward is rambling about um, while he's doing this. So, if you could do that, I would really, really appreciate it. And thank you so much for making the time to listen. And I look forward to chatting with you again real soon.